Hello, BookTube. Well, as you can see, my vacation with Frida Bean at the little farmhouse in Vermont continues. And although time feels like it stopped here in this very old, very welcoming building, the internet marches on, and so does BookTube. and Matthew's tag for Matthew at Mayberry Book Club, I'll leave a link to his channel down below. He made a tag basically asking, has Steve Donoghue read these books? And the gist of the tag is that you go around your shelves and you try to find 8 or 10 books that you think I might not have read. And apparently people like it because people have been doing it. I now have a backlog of these things to answer. I've sort of decided that these things require answers. I can't just leave a comment and say, well, you got some of them right, but not others. So I've done 2 responses so far. I did leave a comment, first of all. To Matthew's original video, I left a comment. I didn't make a video. But then I started to realize, no, these are all video things. They require video responses. So the next one that I did was for Brian at Bookish, and I did a response to him. And I think this whole tag, I love it, and I think it could apply to anybody. I think that it's morphing into what do you think of these books. But the one I want to respond to today is Samuel Daram's. Samuel Daram is BookTube's resident playwright, and he phrased his response video by making a claim that I've never claimed for myself, which is that I've read every book that's ever written. That is not true. That was a claim that was made about Samuel Johnson. Johnson never made it about himself. The veteran readers know exactly how much they haven't read. I've read a lot, and I want to point out, since apparently it needs pointing out in these videos, that you would read just as much if you had nothing else to do. If you did nothing else, your own reading would skyrocket. The rest of you have lives, jobs, family, friends, workplaces, school, hygiene, pants. I don't have any of those things. So, but I want to go through Samuel's video, and I will leave a link to his video down below as well. He picked a series of books. There are a couple of commonalities running throughout them. I've noticed that in the videos that I've watched so far. I think I've seen all the videos that people have done. I just haven't responded to them all. And there are themes that run throughout them. Of course, Matthew in his original video did not make any rules. The only rule was go around your collection and pick books you think I haven't read. I think there should be rules. If your second cousin once removed self-published a book and there are 20 copies in a box in his basement, of course that's an unfair thing to pick. And some of Samuel's picks, I imagine some other picks to come, will verge on that. There aren't any rules to this thing, but I also think it's a little bit, tricky cricket to pick a book from your shelf intentionally knowing that I would not want to read it. But one way or another, even that can catch you by surprise. So the first book that Samuel suggested is Cause Celebe by Helen Fielding. And he points out that Bridget Jones' Diary by the same author was a runaway hit, a million copy bestseller. But that Cause Celebe came before it, and that maybe I wouldn't have read it because of that. And that's not exactly how I work with reading, and I would think you would know that if you watch my videos. If somebody is beetling along and writing just, normally, and then they have a breakout megawatt bestseller, I am going to read their earlier work. It's going to be one of the first things I do. It's not like they're going to burst onto my radar and I'm going to say, all right, well, you're on your radar, my radar now, but you didn't exist before then. No, I went back and read Cause Celebe, just like, in the case of Philippa Gregory, or Hilary Mantel, Philippa Gregory was the same way. In her case, for instance, use her as an example, I was reading her stuff. Same thing with Hilary Mantel. I was reading their historical fiction, and it was just giving me a terminal case of the blahs. And then both of them, the other Boleyn sister and then Wolf Hall, skyrocketed. But even if I had not read their earlier works, I would have gone back and done so. So in the case of Helen Fielding, I did. Although I have to say, we'll get to this, but Samuel's stats are better than anybody so far. I don't know how that's going to be. I think that breaks down in future videos with other people. But let's see. The next one is a classic example of what I mentioned. The kind of book that I'm obviously not, that I obviously will not have read. The kind of book that you can be sure. It's by Arabella Weir, and it's called "Does My Bum Look Big in This?" And that kind of, is my whole life snot? Or does my bum look big in this? Or why is everything so stinky? Those kinds of things I tend not to read. They're not really books, right? They're used to be able to get, those of you who are very, very old and American will remember Bazooka bubblegum. You used to get these little wadges of Bazooka bubblegum, and they came, when you open them up, they came with a little cartoony joke inside, a little piece of paper with a cartoony joke on it. And these books are just book-length versions of those. They have no merit of any kind. So no, I have not read Does My Bum Look Big in This? Then the next one is Once Upon a Time in the East by Xiaolu Go, I think. I'm probably getting that name completely wrong. And I did read that. She's this year she was a Booker Prize judge. But that's not why. It came to my attention before that. It wasn't, I would never go out and read the books of Booker Prize judges, please. but I did read that one. Didn't like it. Thought it was as boring as dishwater, but I did read it. Okay, and then the next one was a bit of an oddity. It took me by surprise because Samuel says that he watches all of my videos and he seems conversant in them. But he clearly has not read every word I've ever written, nor could anyone do that in the course of a normal lifespan. Perhaps Gandalf could do it. Because his next one is We That Are Young by Preti Taneja. And if he had read every word that I've ever written about any book ever, he would know that I've read this book. Because not only have I read it, but it made every year on my blog, well, I had a literary blog named Steve Reads for years and years and years. And every year I did a list of the best and worst books of the year in a wide variety of categories. Now that list still happens. That's going to happen in December. My blog, Steve Reads, has sort of melded into a website. I started a new website in, I think, 2017 called juststevedonoghue.com. The goal eventually is to have nice, clean, presentable, regularly updated versions of every single thing I write anywhere. And although Steve Reads doesn't exist as a separate blog anymore, it does exist as a part of that. So on Open Letters Review and on stevedonoghue.com, my year-end list will show up in December. And one of the categories in that list is debut fiction. And for 2018, We That Are Young was on the best debut fiction list. So yeah, I have read that one, and Samuel must have missed that list. I would think he would have committed it to memory, but then again, I would think that all of you would have committed my best and worst lists to memory, since all other best lists that are coming out, that are flooding the airwaves at this time of year, are mere derivative shadows of mine. I'm sure I don't have to point that out yet again, but it's coming up. And the others can be ignored. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Millions, the TLS, they can be ignored in favor of my list. Then we move on to the next one. The next one is Towelhead by Alicia Erian from 2005. And I did read that, and I thought it was very good. And the only reason that it's sort of not on the radar is because that was while I was out of writing about books. I left off writing about books for a quarter of a century in any way except letters to friends. And that 2005 was the last year that was true. So it was on my radar and I read it, but I didn't have any platform to opine about it. Then the next one is a weird coincidence. It's Lights Out for the Territory by Iain Sinclair. And Samuel describes it as maximalist fiction, sort of everything but the kitchen sink, crazy, gonzo, over-the-top verbiage fiction, and almost commits a Brian Bookish type sin. He mentions that it's maximalist fiction, and he almost implies that because it's maximalist fiction, and because he's absolutely right, I usually don't like maximalist fiction, that therefore I would not read it. That is not true. Good Lord, if I haven't conveyed that on this channel, I don't know what's going wrong. I do not avoid stuff that I don't like, because there's always a chance that I will like it, right? I mean, when it comes to maximalist fiction, I don't think you can get more maximalist than Mason and Dixon. The late stage Thomas Pynchon, Mason and Dixon, Against the Day. I don't think you can get more maximalist than that, and I love those. So, but the reason that Lights Out for the Territory is a little strange is because I did miss it when it originally came out, and just recently, like 2 weeks ago, I came across a big fat UK trade paperback of it at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston. And I have a big sweet tooth for big fat UK trade paperbacks anyway, and so I grabbed it. It was $1, so I grabbed it and sat down and read it. And despite the fact that it does a lot of stuff that usually annoys me, I liked it quite a bit. I don't think I've ever read any other Iain Sinclair. So it's just random chance that Samuel happened to pick one that I've just recently found. So that's not one of the ones on this list where I'm saying, yeah, read it years and years ago, knew the author, married the author. So not anything like that. That one gets in under the wire, but I have read it. The next one is Grey by E.L. James, one of the endless pornography of E.L. James. And again, this is the same thing as the Helen Fielding, where E.L. James had a massive, massive breakout hit with her porn novel, 50 Shades of Grey. And she wrote 2 sequels, and she wrote Grey, and she has a new book, The Mister. And it's the same thing. When an author does that, when an author suddenly breaks into the upper stratosphere of the publishing world, so that, if, for instance, if you're working in a bookstore, literally every third customer will come in wanting it. That, for me anyway, that behooves me to read not only that book, but all of that author. It's just a thing that I automatically do. It doesn't take that much time when we're talking about someone like E.L. James. Grey was, this is a surgically talentless author. It's literally like some Star Trek alien came to her when she was 13, gave her a full body scan like Bones McCoy in sickbay, and said, here are the beginnings of literary talent. We must remove them right down to the genetic level. So every decision that's made on the page is wrong. Starting, of course, with the decision to publish anything. but I have read it. So it doesn't... Then the next one is The Apology by Eve Ensler. I have read this. I thought it was worthless, but I have read it. And then the next one is The Divided Island by Samanth Subramanian. Let's see, Subramanian, and I might not know how to pronounce the author's name, but I have read the book. And the irony here is that I read the book because of Samuel. This is a BookTube book. This is a book that I read because of BookTube. Because Samuel, if memory serves, he's working on a book about the Sri Lankan Civil War, and this is all about that. And I liked it. I liked it a lot. I learned a lot from it, and therefore, because I went into it not really knowing, the subject backwards and forwards, I was willing to turn a blind eye to the prose. I think if I did that, later on down the line, if I learn a lot more about the Sri Lankan Civil War, I think I would probably find large chunks of it boring. But in this case, that wasn't on the table because I had a lot to learn from it. So that actually is a yes. But then we get to 2 no's. The last 2 are 2 books that I haven't read. The first one is The Cage by Gordon Weiss, and it also is about the Sri Lankan Civil War. It sounded fascinating to listen to Samuel talk about it, but I haven't read it. And the last one, is much like Does My Bum Look Big in This? It's How to Make Love All Night by Barbara Keesling. And I don't know if I've stressed this on this channel at all, but I am 100% of Irish descent. So I'm not really interested in even making it to 20 minutes before I want to, make some rice and read. So I have no interest in this last book at all. I wouldn't read it if it was right on the counter in front of me. So there you go. And if you were keeping count at home there, that means that out of these books, Samuel hit 3 that I haven't read. And as far as these response videos go, I've done 2, and the previous 2, one for Matthew and one for Brian, the number was 2. Both of those had 2 books that I hadn't read. Now we're up to 3. So it still hasn't happened that somebody has done one that has all 8 or all 10, that has every book that I haven't read, but where the books are still legitimate picks. It would be easy to pick 8 or 10 books that I haven't read, right? It would be easy to do that. All you have to do is go to your basement, open a box in storage, and pick out an old MS-DOS instruction manual. I certainly haven't read that, or anything like that. It would be easy to do. So within the narrower prospect of books that that I would have a chance of reading, this is the highest number. We're up to 3. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. These tags are, I cannot thank Matthew enough for starting this bear poking going, because it's working out just recommending great books for me and for all the rest of you. So it's having a wonderful second life in addition to all of you having a go at me. So I will make responses from now on. No matter how much time it takes, I will make responses, because I think the subtext of a lot of these videos isn't so much has Steve read this book as what does Steve think of this book if he has read it. Fine by me. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. Thank you very much, Samuel. I will be back, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.